to talk about Joseph today, and we will. I'm just not going to read the text. I'll tell you a little bit about the story. And some of this, I think you probably know. Joseph had big dreams, and he did not keep them to himself. And in time, with his birth family, that went pretty badly. Adored by his father, despised by his brothers, Joseph was sold into slavery, we heard that in last week's lesson, and plunged into a world very different than his own, very different customs, very different language, very different role, very different haircut. In time, this difference, where Joseph went, turned out really well, went very well for him. The scribe writes in the Joseph novella, God was with him, and he rose to power in Egypt, and perhaps had oil poured over his head and down his beard and onto his robe. Not the robe that made his brothers jealous, but an impressive new robe in a new homeland where he also was given a new name. This is one of my favorite names in the Bible. It is not the longest one. There is a longer one. If you want to know what the longer one is, see me while we're throwing the frisbee out on the lawn. He's given a new name, Zaphenath-Paneah, the ruler of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh, and he had a specific job portfolio, overseer of the grain distribution program. Joseph had dreamt of famine, and it became a reality. Eventually, it brought his brothers, his biological half-brothers, to Egypt to make a deal for the grain. And a kind of game begins. Joseph recognizes these 10, but they don't recognize him. He's not the teenage boy they sold. He's a 40-plus-year-old man of immense prestige and power. When the 10 meet, for convenience sake, Z, when the 10 meet Z in Egypt, he gets them to say that there were 12 sons of Jacob, that one of their brothers is dead, and that the youngest is at home. As part of this game, then, Z requires them to bring his full brother Benjamin to him before he will sell them grain. When they do, Joseph creates a ruse, more game playing, that suggests Benjamin's life is in danger. And back in Canaan, their father Jacob, believing Joseph has been dead for all these years, had kept Benjamin close. But Jacob was a pragmatist, was a realist, and he understood that providing for all of his family outweighed the favor and protection he wanted to extend to his youngest son alone. From the time his brothers sold him until this moment, Joseph had learned to survive and thrive in a kind of exile. He had a new identity, but at the cost of the one that he had, who he had been before. Now, perhaps for the first time in his life, he can choose whether or not to be known for who he is fully, who he really is. Alone with his brothers, the emotions and the words tumble out, I am your brother Joseph. And the reaction of the brothers is understandable. We read dismayed in most English translation, but the Hebrew verb here means terrified. They are terrified. Of course they are. These brothers have been oil and water all their lives. And now, Zaphenath-Paneah, holds the power of life and death over them. He easily could get revenge, but he offers them peace. Why? Because Joseph interprets not only dreams, but reality. This reality in which all the brothers find themselves this way. This way is how he interprets. What you meant for evil, God meant for good. That's a really remarkable, amazing statement, and it is almost unique in the Bible, because I think the only other place where something that's said by a person comes close is, "Forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." Joseph's story is about forgiveness and reconciliation and salvation and grace, and his story is also about fulfilling dreams. The scene ends with Joseph and Benjamin and then all of the brothers not needing any words, because they anoint each other not with oil, but with their tears, releasing decades of sorrow and of joy. Now, that reunion did not solve all of their sibling rivalry or take away the pain of separation and loss, but it did bring respite and hope to a family and to a nation. It models reconciliation in a world that can never be reminded too often how good it is when brothers, sisters, siblings dwell in unity. Now, you might expect me to say amen and sit down. Not yet. Because there's this gospel story. How does that get paired with this? A woman approached Jesus. That wasn't easy. She was not a Jew. She knew that in the eyes of Jews she was nothing. This woman, unnamed, that's not unusual, comes pleading for her child, for a member of her family, saying that her daughter was tormented by a demon. Whatever that was, whatever that meant, it was bad. And Jesus' response was, "I'm here for the house of Israel. That's not my problem." The Bible gives us lots of images of Jesus: the host, the guest, the teacher, the healer, the miracle worker, the shepherd. Here, in an exceptionally rare display, we see Jesus, let's say, not at his best. The woman pleads a second time, and Jesus insults her. Food's for the children, not for the dogs. Dog is the worst insult one could hurl at a person in the ancient Near East. It is still a big insult in the East, in the Orient. Nevertheless, she was not going to be dismissed or discouraged, and she retorts, "Even dogs get the scraps from the table." She stands up to the Rabbi Jesus. She holds up a kind of mirror to him. She embarrasses him. She challenges him. She teaches him. And she comes to us in this text as a paradigm of tenacity and faith. How many ways do we generate separate and separating categories of color, age, occupation, sexuality, gender, nationality, politics, socioeconomic class, lots of ways that we split the family? Followers of Jesus are called to extend radical hospitality. Jesus, in a fashion, repents in this story and does for her what she asks. There is room in God's heart. There is room in God's house for everyone, for everyone. There is one God. There is one humanity. And we should make that real in our words and in our actions. Yes, there is sibling rivalry on a global scale. And yes, there can be peace on earth. When we see our brothers and sisters, our siblings, our family, when we laugh with them, weep with them, forgive them, ask and accept their forgiveness, share who we really are, and honor who they really are, when we learn from one another, then the whole people of God can find rescue and renewal and reconciliation and truly begin to know how good and pleasant it is to dwell in unity. Here comes the Amen.
Please stand and join me in singing our final hymn, "Let There Be Peace on Earth," which you will find the lyrics in your bulletin. to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Now may God bless and keep us. May God's face shine upon us and be gracious to us. May God lift up the light of divine countenance upon us. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin here and now. Go in peace and with joy. Amen. Join us if you have time for lemonade on the lawn. We're outside today, are we? Yes? And we'll throw around Plato's plate? Okay.